Hello, everybody. My name is Barbara White, and on behalf of Denise Plowman, Heather Flessing, and myself, I'd like to thank you for coming in and joining us today. We're really looking forward to this, and thank you for your support, and we appreciate you viewing with us today. I'd like to take just a moment to talk to you about our goals of this symposium. And the first of all is we'd like to provide like a platform or a place in women of Kenpo to come together to experience it or to share their experiences and their journey through Kenpo. And we'd like to provide an ever-growing community of support among Kenpo women for personal growth that we can share throughout a women's journey in their Kenpo. And also to recognize the wide variety of Kenpo leaders that we have out there and learn from them as well. So we hope that this continues to grow, and we hope to really provide a service to Kenpo women. The way it works is that prior to each symposium, we ask women in the community about topics that they may be interested in hearing about on the next symposium. And then we relate those topics to the symposium itself. To date, including the 2014 symposium, we've had about 26 women share their experiences and their hopes with other women. So I think it's just a really great thing that we have. On today's panel, we have such a diverse, strong women Kenpo leaders, and together they have about 293 combined years of training. We're really extremely fortunate to have the opportunity to hear from them today. Since our last symposium, we've added a couple things to our site. We have a website now that has been up since probably for the last 3 months or so. And thanks to Denise Plowman out there, we now have an Instagram account. So we really encourage you to look on these sites and share with others and pass the message on that we would really like to continue these. At this time, I'd like to share with you Heather Flessing. She's our moderator for this event, and I have the privilege of being her friend and her training partner. Heather is a third-degree black belt who began her Kenpo journey at Bob White's Karate Studio in 2010, Costa Mesa, California. She's attended karate tournaments in Nevada and Southern California, achieving first place in sparring as well as forms in many of these tournaments. In addition to being a Kenpoist, Heather studies Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and now is a blue belt. Heather has what I think is the very difficult job of being the staging coordinator for our charitable youth karate event that supports Royal Family Kids. She's also been a counselor at this same camp, which takes place every June. At the studio, Heather teaches children's classes, adult sparring classes, private lessons, and contributes in a huge way to our studio family. She volunteers her time outside the studio through her church by teaching women's self-defense classes in an effort to share her passion and experience with other women. And I'd like to add also, Heather is involved in the kids' games, which occurs as a church-wide organization, which brings kids to a central place to study sports. And she teaches the karate portion of that, of the kids' games. As you're now aware, Heather's the moderator for each symposium that we have, and her expertise really extends past the editing of the bios and the creating the flyers and the media that you've seen on Facebook. Heather is also going to be the one who's going to take all the work to input our symposium as well as the individual panels and their bios onto our symposium website. Heather's an avid learner. She strives for excellency in all that she does, and you can see it in her Kenpo. She has a passion and enthusiasm for Kenpo, and this enthusiasm spreads to others. She maintains a strong work ethic and a desire for further education. She's by taking lessons with my husband when she can. Heather lives in Orange, California with her husband and her 3 cats. She's a reading interventions teacher at an elementary school in the nearby city of Fullerton, and she loves to teach. She has her master's degree in both education and accountancy and teaches college accounting classes at Cal State University in Long Beach. So at this time, I'm very happy to turn this over to Heather Flessing.
Okay, thank you very much, Barb. All right, so I want to go over what it is that we're going to be doing today at our symposium, for those of you who have not attended one before. So how it works is we're going to be introducing the panelists, telling you more about them, and then they will have a chance to answer a question that has been submitted to us by various people throughout the past year and a half or so. Now, as we go through the symposium, if you have any questions that you would like to ask either specific panelists or you think would be an interesting thing just to find out what someone on the panel would say about it, please submit that to the chat. So I will be monitoring the chat, and then if the question is for a specific person, I will send them a chat so they know what the question is and they can prepare an answer for it. Whereas if it's just a general question, I have this handy 10-sided die, and the 10 panelists or the 10 people on the symposium will have a chance by roll of the die to see who gets to answer that question. So that will happen at the end. We hope to have about 10 minutes for question and answer time at the very end. So please submit your questions to the chat so we can have some great opportunities to answer things that are important to you in addition to what we're already going to be speaking about today. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce the very first panelist. Christine Bannon Rodriguez is a 9th degree black belt in Oki-Ryu Kenpo and has been studying the martial arts for almost 42 years. She also trains and teaches Wushu, Krav Maga, and kickboxing. Christine and her husband, Don, who is also her instructor, are 2 of only 3 people to have been certified by 3 of the Kenpo pioneers in the United States: Grandmaster Nick Serio, Grandmaster Ed Parker, and Grandmaster George Basari. She and her husband own a school in Warwick, Rhode Island, the Don Rodriguez Karate Academy. Christine fell in love with competition, and after she became a national champion, she set out for the Worlds. She broke a record by winning gold medal in forms, fighting, and weapons at the WACO World Championships in 1991, and she went back to do it again in 1993. She holds 9 WACO World titles and has been known for being a triple threat. She was a member of the famous Trans World Oil Atlantic Karate Team and later became the first female on Team Paul Mitchell. After retiring from competition, she was sought after to be in the next Karate Kid movie, doing martial arts as Hilary Swank's double. Christine really enjoyed working on films and went on to work on Batman and Robin, Sci-Fighter, WMAC Masters, the Mortal Kombat TV series, and many, many more. She is still working on stunts in movies whenever she gets the opportunity. Christine has appeared on over 50 magazine covers and has been inducted into over 40 Hall of Fames, including Black Belt Magazine's Hall of Fame and Inside Kung Fu Magazine's Hall of Fame. Not only does she spend her days teaching at her school, she teaches seminars all over the world on various topics. Christine is also the coach of Team Macho and has been a product designer and spokesperson for Macho Martial Arts for over 30 years. She co-promotes the Ocean State Grand Nationals with her husband. This event is on the NASCA World Tour. She is married and has 2 sons and 2 stepsons, as well as a Great Dane. So Christine, welcome to the panel. And with the many years that you have in the arts, what motivated you throughout, especially through any challenging times you may have had? And what motivates you now to continue in training in the arts?
Thank you, Heather. It's a pleasure to be here. As far as being motivated in the martial arts, it's to me something that's never ending. You never reach that point where you've completely learned everything and there's nothing left. Martial arts, I think we can train until we're 100 and we still haven't learned it all. There's always something new to learn, and I think that's exciting after the 40-something years in the martial arts and at our age, that you can still go out on the mat and learn something new. So that definitely keeps me motivated. And also from the very start, I think it was a matter of learning how to set goals. And my instructor, who is now my husband, stressed that as far as setting short-term goals that would lead to long-term goals. And at the beginning, it was just learning, setting those goals of earning each belt through the ranks to try to achieve that black belt. And that was my main goal setting was to earn my black belt. And then I got really involved in competition. And with that, I set the short-term goal that I wanted to become a champion in New England. I wanted to achieve that in forms fighting and weapons. And so I did achieve that. And then I set out to become a national champion. And then after that, the next is the world championships. I want to compete with the best in the world. And I did that with WACO. And I think at that time there was like 80 something countries involved. And it's grown since. So, it was something that I could set a goal and really try to climb that ladder and achieve that goal. And after I did the WACO World Championships and after winning 9 world titles, I started to get involved with film work and decided to retire from competition. There's so many different avenues for the martial arts. It's not just being a student or just being a competitor. Then I was an instructor and still am. So teaching, I have goals of wanting to make all my students achieve their goals and help them become the best that they can possibly be. And also doing stunt work in movies. I felt like a white belt. I was starting all over again. So I had set goals with that. And I'm still doing it. So it's a lot of fun. And also in the martial arts, being a promoter. So we promote the Ocean State Grand Nationals. So it's, a lot of different areas of the martial arts that keep me motivated and keep me wanting to work harder and continue my learning, but also achieve those goals in those different fields of the martial arts. And also working with Macho Products, I'm able to help design safety equipment for them and, make our equipment better and safer for people that are out there competing or just in the schools themselves. So that's pretty much what keeps me motivated as far as any difficult times I've had, whether it was when my parents had passed away when I was very young and things like that. The dojo is really kind of like my escape. I can come here and whether it's teaching or training, I kind of leave everything else on the outside and come in and just focus on the martial arts. So I think the martial arts has really helped me get through tough times. And been able to really keep myself focused. So that is my answer.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Christine. And the next person I'd like to introduce has been a participant in our previous 2 virtual symposiums that we've had. Denise Plowman is a 6th degree black belt under the instruction of Senior Master John Sepulveda in the Advanced Kenpo Training System. Her Kenpo training began in 1994 under the instruction of Mr. Steve Moore at the newly opened Boise Kenpo Karate School. And she was promoted to 1st degree black belt under the American Kenpo Karate System at the Jeff Speakman camp in 1998. She was the first woman to be promoted to a black belt in a Kenpo organization in the state of Idaho at that time. And in 1999, Mr. Stephen Moore decided to pursue his career in law enforcement, and Denise made the decision to take over the Boise Kenpo Karate School. She was an amateur full contact kickboxing coach and trainer, and she had a handful of fighters who competed in both Idaho and California. In 2011, due to a promotion in her career, which required a lot more travel, Denise made the decision to close the Boise Kenpo Karate School. In 2017, Denise retired and recommitted herself to her Kenpo journey. Once again, she began teaching students out of her garage and continued her training directly under Mr. John Sepulveda. She also continued training in kickboxing at a local Muay Thai club and has recently begun training in the art of Pikite Tercia. Welcome, Denise, and we look forward to having you once again on our panel.
Thanks, Heather. So the next panelist I'm going to introduce, I'm honored for her to be part of our 3rd symposium, is Catherine Franca. Catherine started judo at the age of 16, and after a few years, when it was possible after the fall of the wall in the German Democratic Republic, she started her career in Shotokan karate. Catherine's first master lived in Berlin, and she lived far enough away that she only had the opportunity to acquire new knowledge maybe 3 to 4 times a year. Because of this, she undertook her own training as a yellow belt, not only teaching herself, but also leading the training of others. It was a difficult but very rewarding experience. In 1999, Catherine found her way in martial arts to American Kenpo, which she supplemented with Taiji and Qigong. She is very inquisitive and likes to learn, finding herself inspired by martial arts of various kinds. She says she is infinitely grateful for so many great encounters with masters around the world. In recent years, Catherine has found a teacher in Matt Snell, head instructor and 7th degree senior professor from the Flaming Fist British Kenpo Karate Academy. She currently holds the rank of 3rd degree black belt in American Kenpo Karate. And for 30 years, she has been managing the Pulsnitzer Association Asia Budo Club Bushido EV and teaching American Kenpo Karate, Taiji, and dance there. She is also a teacher of Qigong. According to Catherine, her hobbies combine very well with her work as a therapist in a psychosomatic rehabilitation clinic. She says the martial arts have given her stability in many traumatic situations in her life, both mentally and physically. So Catherine, welcome. And the question to you is, how do you incrementally begin training after a serious illness or injury?
Thank you, Denise. This question cannot be answered in a few words. There are many reasons. What is the underlying disease or injury? How is the healing process? And how is the affected person dealing with it? In my opinion, there are 2 points of view. In my job, I accompany patients back into their daily lives and their work and their sporting activities. I already had serious injuries myself and suffer from a chronic illness that strongly affects my life. What is true for both perspectives? Stabilize the psyche and the body. There should be not separation of body, mind, and soul. Only when all 3 aspects are strengthened, a person can develop a healthy and very good quality of life. What do I mean? There are different healing processes and time frames for every disease or injury. However, it should be kept in mind that the individual healing process may take different periods of the time for different individuals. Therefore, it is particularly important to consider the advice of specialists and physiotherapists and to follow the corresponding guidelines. In my opinion, the training starts already in the acute phase, not only physically, but mentally. The mental training, the inner training, so to speak, is very important, really. If I can't move in reality or aren't allowed to, then I have to start imagining movements or processes. I'm going through all the movements mentally, but not only that. With targeted breathing and attention and the sense of Qigong, it is possible to support one's own self-healing powers. The positive effects of Qigong and physical and mental illnesses can already lie in the coordination of body and mind, and paying attention to the own body and interpreting its signals. Even in times of health and personal crisis, concentrating on the here and now, developing mindfulness towards yourself, or simply taking time out for yourself. All of this can have positive effects. Each of this can make the disease's difference in the quality of life for the individual. Symptoms can improve. Whether you have a long-term illness of various kinds or injuries, start with breath training and light movements against gravity without resistance or weights. What would be the possible consequences of too early or too intensive training comeback? A logical consequence of a premature or too intensive return to sporting activity is re-disease. However, the same disease may take a more severe course and the time to recover could be significantly longer the second time. Excuse me. Other possible consequences of exaggerating sports too early in the healing process could include circularity and heart problems. Heart muscle inflammation can develop as a result of too early and to intensive re-entry into training. Life-threatening and months or at worst lifelong symptoms, as well as severely reduced performance, may be associated with this. It is often forgotten that there is a higher risk of injury during excessive workouts. Physically and mentally, you are not yet fully recovered, and the risk of a training accident increases. As a result, you may slide from a break due to illness directly into a break due to injury. Why is training important after the illness has healed? For our immune system, it is essential to start regular training and under controlled conditions after the disease is survived. Those who initially proceed carefully and slowly approach the old loads in training will strengthen the immunity, and those prevent later illnesses, at least to a certain extent. Training after injuries. An injury tears the person directly out of the usual training routine. This puts a particular strain on one's own mental balance. The severity of injuries and accompanying injuries after overload or accidents varies greatly, ranging from muscle strains and bruises to simple bone fractures, ligament ruptures, and severe trauma. The length of the injury break and the rehabilitation phase are determined accordingly, and each injury has to be assessed separately. I would also like to point out that it may be possible to use the injury break to train other parts of the body that have remained uninjured, especially if physical training would otherwise fail due to injury in the long term. The precondition is that the injury allows it. An example for this would be to perform a strength training for the upper body despite a leg injury. Instead of falling into a motivation hole due to the unusual training break, it can be mentally very helpful to take care of other areas of the body, possible previous weak spots. Don't go beyond the pain limit and do not train while taking painkillers. Why is training after injuries important? Especially after injuries, training plays an immensely important role. The aim is to achieve not only freedom from pain, but also full resilience in and around the injured area. Without it, future injuries are inevitable. Side differences, which could lead to further complications, are also compensated or avoided in the course of the training process. Confidence in one's own body is gradually restored and the fun of exercise is regained. My ideas, which I give to my patients and which I live by myself, strengthen the body, mind, and soul, accept what is and use it to your advantage. This is my answer of the question. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next panelist, I had the privilege of attending one of her classes at one of the first Jeff Speakman camps a few years back, and she has always been a huge impact on me. Jackie Mcvicker is an 8th degree black belt and associate master of the arts, was born in Torquay, Devon in the United Kingdom. She's worked full-time in retail management. Additionally, she worked for 7 years as a SIA registered door steward, or, which I love this, citizen ejection technician, as she likes to call it, in one of Torquay's biggest nightclubs. Jackie began her training in the martial arts in 1965. She began in judo and then in Shotokan before taking up Kenpo in the late 1978. She tested for her black belt in 1982 with Rainier Schultz, the European director for the International Kenpo Karate Association. She was instructed and tested by 10th degree black belt grandmaster Ed Parker, the founder of Kenpo Karate, and her 2nd degree in 1985 and for her 3rd degree in 1989. 4 years later, Jackie tested for her 4th degree by 7th degree black belt John Sepulveda and Roy McDonald in Jersey Channel Islands via the IKKA and tested to 5th degree in Dublin, Ireland. By 7th degree black belt John Sepulveda in 1997 via the AKKS. Over the next almost 20 years, she was awarded her 6th, 7th, and 8th degree black belts by 9th degree black belt Jeff Speakman at his international training camp in Las Vegas. Jackie has won numerous competitions and held British and European titles in fighting and team fighting, Kenpo forms, and Kenpo self-defense techniques, both within the Kenpo world and in open competition. She was featured in Martial Arts Illustrated and Combat and Fighters magazine. She founded the Mcvicker Kenpo Karate Academy and was a founding member and head instructor of the Senior Council of the British Kenpo Karate Association. Jackie is one of the highest ranking female Kenpo instructors in Europe. Unfortunately, after 39 years teaching at her academy, with no one wishing to take over, and in light of COVID and all its restrictions, she decided to close her academy. She took pride in teaching a tough but achievable adult and junior program that contained the perfect mix of theory and sweat. Her classes were fast-paced, gratifying, and educational. She is forever grateful for the time spent with Mr. Parker and her colleagues, Mr. Gary Ellis and Mr. Mervyn Ormond, who were both original BKKA founders. Her priority has always to help students gain a better understanding of their current skill level and beyond. And although she gave up on her academy, she is very much still a Kenpo and continues to practice it. As Mr. Parker used to say, you will give up on Kenpo before it gives up on you. So Jackie, again, welcome to the symposium. Our question for you is, what was the best advice that you received regarding your training throughout the years, especially from Mr. Parker and the other seniors that you had training and relationships with?
Hiya, Denise. Thank you. I first met Mr. Parker in November 1980. I was about to take my 2nd degree brown belt, and Gary Ellis was going to take his 1st degree black. I was extremely fortunate in my training partners, Gary Ellis and Mervyn Ormond, both really big guys. And I quickly realized in order to make my Kenpo effective, I had to perfect the basics, the stances, and the power principles and the concepts within Kenpo. The next day after the grading, I saw Mr. Parker's seminar, and I just saw him do an elbow sandwich. And that was enough for me. I was stunned. I thought, wow, that's what I want. And if you can see this picture, I think you'll see what my feelings were on meeting the great man. I don't know if you realize, but where we live in the Southwest, anytime Mr. Parker flew in, it's a 5-hour journey. So I would accompany either Gary Ellis or Mervyn Ormond to pick him up. And you can imagine what we talked about all the way down to the Southwest. In terms of advice, quite difficult to say because we would do it as a group, and the advice was given out via whatever Mr. Parker felt we need to be working on. And from then on, we'd bring Mr. Parker in twice a year. And the way it worked was he would either go to the Channel Islands, Jersey Channel Islands with Roy McDonald, either to Dublin with Eddie Downey, or ourselves within the BKK in the Southwest. So the last time I saw Mr. Parker, it was in April 1990. He came over with Mrs. Parker and taught in England. And then he went to Dublin, and myself and Mervyn Ormond decided to accompany him to Dublin for the seminars. Little did we know that that was the last time we would see him. Okay. So then I kind of jumped to October 1994. I attended a camp hosted by Eddie Downey in Ireland, and the camp instructors were going to be Brian Duffy, John Sepulveda, and Jeff Speakman. Whilst I was training in the seminar, Mr. Speakman came over to me, pointed to me and said, "You move like Mr. Parker. You've been trained by Mr. Parker," which which was kind of nice. And then that evening, they instigated a meeting with me whereby they suggested that they would really like to come to England. Could I set that up? So on coming back and talking to my fellow BKK committee, Gary Ellis and Mervyn Ormond, we brought them over, and on a really freezing cold night in the following year, 196 students came. And again, not necessarily advice, but the instruction was giving us further insights in Mr. Parker's Kenpo. I'd like to say that I'm a very proud member of the Kenpo 5.0 family, Mr. Speakman's family, a wonderful group of martial artists that I'm very proud to be associated with. I'm sure to Mr. Speakman's chagrin, I still do Mr. Parker's Kenpo. I love it. And then, although I had to give up my academy after 39 years, I've been training for 43. I love Kenpo, and I've gone full circle now, and I have met up with a 9th degree Gary Ellis of the Parker Wedlake lineage, and I am excited. I am stunned by the breadth of that guy's knowledge. So I will be, don't like to say it, but I will be 72 at the end of this year. And as long as I remain healthy, I will continue to, that's the beauty of Kenpo. You always got something to learn. And that's all I can say to all my fellow ladies in the art. It's never too late to start. It's never too late to continue with your studies of the marvelous art that is Ed Parker's Kenpo. So thank you very much, Denise, and I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Jackie. So our next panelist is Kat Gorinsky. Kat lives in Austin, Texas, with her husband, Billy, and their 2 children, Billy and Nova. She has been practicing martial arts since 2000 when she was in high school. As a grade school student, Kat was very skinny and short and was often teased. Through martial arts, she gained confidence, a control over her exercise-induced asthma, and an appreciation for perseverance and hard work through the many tournaments in which she used to compete. Kat holds the rank of 2nd degree black belt, and her school is Immortal Tiger Kenpo Karate. She is trained since 2011 directly under Master Professor Bill Grossman, who is based in South San Francisco, California, where Kat used to live before moving to Austin, Texas, and who is of the Ralph Castro, Rick Almini lineage. One unplanned positive for the COVID-19 pandemic has been that she was able to resume actively training with Master Professor Grossman via Zoom from both black belt group classes and regular one-on-one private lessons. Prior to Kenpo, Kat trained and received 1st degree black belts in karate under Rinshi Chris Lohasser of World Karate Academy in Center Moriches, New York, and also in Taekwondo under Grandmaster Deborah Grimaldi of Tiger Martial Arts in Chesterton, Indiana. In addition, she was actively studied Iaido, or Japanese sword, in all her previous locations under the past 20 plus years, and continues to train in Austin under the Austin Komei Juku School. Kat holds a full-time job as a senior network engineer for Apple Incorporated, but martial arts has always been her passion. She runs her dojo Tuesday and Thursday evenings and Saturday mornings. Kat began subletting to teach in Austin back in 2017, but it wasn't until the pandemic that she finally started looking for a place to lease and opened her first storefront at the beginning of 2021. She was the first person to bring the Castro branch of Shaolin Kenpo Karate to Texas. Since then, she has been humbled by the growth of the school, as well as the passion and dedication of her students. She loves giving back to the community and serving as a role model for all her students. So Kat, welcome. The question that we have for you is, what is your favorite technique and why?
Thank you, Denise. Something that I have always loved about Kenpo is the thought that goes into techniques and the careful planning to always be thinking 2 moves ahead. What I mean by this is that many of our techniques set up the attacker to respond and move into the position we want them for our follow-up strikes. One of my favorite techniques that does a really great job highlighting this is number 3 of the kata, swift arrow. Number 3 of our katas are always a right punch attack, and in the 5 prior forms a student has learned before swift arrow, the attacker leaves their arms out after they punch, and this is the first time that the attacker pulls the arm back immediately after executing the punch. In most of the earlier forms, we strike to the ribs after they punch, but now the student finds that the ribs are protected by the pulled back arm and must react differently. So here we choose to punch to the face rather than the ribs. From here on out, we are already thinking about our next strike, which makes the flurry of moves that follow all well planned. As our right hand is punching to their face, our left hand comes back from the block into an open side palm position next to our ribs. This puts it in place to block if need be, but more importantly is where we need it so that as soon as we have finished punching, we can execute a left side palm to the attacker's ribs. The intention of the previous punch to the face was to get the attacker to react by grabbing their face, thus exposing the ribs. As that side palm is executed, the right hand, which had just punched, comes straight back and the fist opens. The attacker's arm drop again in reaction to our side palm to their ribs. We are then immediately able to execute a follow-up vertical palm to their face as we step in forward towards them. As the right palm is executed, the left hand comes to the center of our chest and then immediately proceeds to throw a left hand chop to the throat. Now the right hand at the same time is being pulled back behind us. The hand is in a crane and it has now become our swift arrow, being pulled back like on a bow, and then it is immediately released as we shift our stances back to a horse stance and release all of that power in the side palm to the attacker's chest. At this point, we have now finished our combinations and finally cover back. I just love how the other hand is already being put into position every time you're on the current strike, and the thought that's put into how we make the attacker open to the targets that we want to hit. Something when my friends want to play fight with me or ask me is, oh, what would I do in XYZ situation? They're often surprised when I say something like, I'd throw a knee or stomp them in their foot first, especially for grabs. I would always stomp on the feet first. I'm smaller than most of my male friends who are asking me, what would I do for these questions? And the key is that while I may have a bunch of great techniques to execute, I have to first soften up my opponent before I can release the grab and then execute all those wonderful cause and effect type strikes. And that's why it's my favorite technique, because it does just that.
All right, thank you very much. And we are about halfway through our symposium. And I want to encourage you, if you have any questions for any of the panelists or any general questions you'd like answered, please make sure you send them in the chat. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next person. The next person is our events hostess, Barbara White. And Barb began her martial arts journey in 1991 and holds a 7th degree black belt in Kenpo karate. Barb found her way to her home at Bob White's Karate Studio, or BWKS, 6 years into her training. There she met her husband, best friend, and partner, Bob. And together, they operate Bob White's Karate Studio in Costa Mesa, California. They've traveled together to Europe, South America, and throughout the United States to teach seminars. Together, they have 6 adult daughters who have families of their own. On the days Barbara is not working as a registered nurse, she's teaching at the karate school. Barbara has expressed that martial arts has impacted her life in ways she would never have foreseen. She therefore has a desire to pass this feeling of empowerment to others through a women's self-defense program she started in 2007 called Empowerment. Barbara and her husband, Bob, as well as the BWKS team, actively promote a weekend event for Royal Family Kids, a worldwide organization that provides a week-long camp for abused and neglected children. Barb has been a camp nurse since 2006, and she also runs a karate program at this same camp. Another passion of Barb's is the desire to promote the recognition of women in our Kenpo system. She conducted a women's symposium in 2014 at the 50th anniversary of the International Karate Championship and is happy to be continuing these symposiums now. In 2017, she was inducted into the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame and is featured in the Journey Book 3, American Kenpo's Next Generations. She was recognized as the Kenpo Woman of the Year in Miami, Florida in 2019, and a year later received acknowledgement from ABC News as a healthcare hero during the pandemic. Barb feels a sense of gratitude to God, family, and our Kenpo community for the immeasurable joy and opportunities provided through her career in both Kenpo and nursing. So welcome, Barb.
Thank you, Heather. Well, I have the pleasure of introducing this next woman on our panel, Erica Potter, a Native American from the Pueblo of Jemez in New Mexico, has been involved in martial arts since 1987. At age 15, she started training in the art of Chinese Kenpo under the direction of Mr. Larry Hamilton. When she started training her martial arts journey, she was simply the big sister, driving her little brother to his karate class. She would sit and wait until finally one day she decided to join in on the fun. She trained until she graduated from high school and then began working 2 jobs to help her mother with the bills while going to college to obtain her criminal justice associate's degree. She had the desire to join the State Police Academy alongside her childhood friend, but life happened and she had to switch gears. For some years, she needed to redirect her energy and to focus on being a good mom for her son, Marcus. One day, though, she took Marcus for a run and found that her instructor had relocated his Kenpo studio near her neighborhood. She got back into training and eventually met her future husband, Tony Potter. Not long after they're married, they were driving in the nearby town of Albuquerque and happened to make a wrong turn. This wrong turn led them to a Jeff Speakman Kenpo 4.0 school. They quickly went in to chat for the school owner and they learned about a seminar that weekend and they haven't looked back since. So fast forward to today. Erica is a mom to 3 wonderful children, Marcus, Dakota, and Sky, and she considers her children to be one of her greatest accomplishments. She tells everyone, though, that she has at least 100 plus children, and even though she can be tough on her students, she cares for each and every one of them dearly. Erica is the office manager for both the family business, Jeff Speakman's Kenpo 5.0 Santa Fe, which opened up in 2003, and TurboTech LLC, a restaurant hood exhaust cleaning business that her husband established in 1994. Erica has been nominated and accepted into the FBI Citizens Academy. Though Eric wasn't able to pursue and fulfill her dream of becoming a police officer, she was able to help her best friend, who is a major in the state police department, with the training of cadets. Erica assists her husband, Tony, with seminars for the local corrections department, public school, PE programs, community health fairs, and church events. Erica has had the opportunity to teach at a few seminars for the annual Jeff Speakman's 5.0 World Cup Training Camp in Las Vegas, Nevada. She has traveled alongside Master Speakman and many other instructors to teach seminars throughout Australia, New Zealand, and several places in Europe. Her mission is to help students of all ages believe in themselves by building their self-esteem, confidence, and self-defense. Along with being an instructor in Kenpo 5.0, she's also certified in the exercise format TRX, which she loves. Fitness is very important to her, and she strives to not only be proficient in the martial arts, but maintain a healthy well-being. Erica says this quote describes exactly how she feels. I want to inspire people. I want someone to look at me and say that because of you, I did not quit. So Erica, welcome to the seminar, to the symposium. Thank you. You and your husband have had a successful karate studio since 2003, and there seems to be many karate studios owned and operated by married couples. So the question that we have for you is this: have you any suggestions on maintaining a successful relationship both on and off the mat?
Well, thank you, Barbara, very much for that. Yes, actually, we all often hear the term of unconditional love. Well, I believe that we should, start off by definitely making sure that you love one another and definitely love yourself, because if you don't, there's just, it would end right there. The other thing is a love for God and your faith. Whatever it may be, that's huge for us in our relationship. It does bring everything together. And then, of course, there's a love for the art. And I feel like the love for the art of Kenpo has definitely made a huge impact on our family in general. We grew up or grew together and met each other doing Kenpo, starting out with Kenpo, going through the journey of changing systems and then building our school and our school base. All of that can be challenging, but if you love what you're doing, it becomes, something that you're not going to give up on. The other thing is trusting in the fact that the journey is going to work, trust in one another, and trust is huge all the way around, because many times people are training, and I see this happen all the time. You have not only instructors come in, but students come in, and maybe the spouse isn't so, for the art itself, and then we are always working so hand in hand and close contact with other people, other opposite sex for that matter. And if your spouse or your person doesn't trust you, or you don't have a trust, then I think there's a little break there. So trust is huge. You need to make sure you trust your loved one. And then the other thing, of course, I'm going to go down my list, okay, because it's important. There's honesty on all levels. Just, being honest with one another is huge. Respect is one where it's not a hard thing to do, but sometimes it's hard to do that as a married couple and be cordial sometimes, because if you're being corrected somehow and taking it a little too personal, sometimes it could show through your reaction. So just take that moment to have respect for one another. And if you don't agree, which sometimes happens, you don't always agree on certain terms or certain techniques or how to relay that information to your students, we got to figure out code words or eye contact or something so that you can discuss that off the mat. We come to those. Sometimes it's challenging. Sometimes we forget because we are human. But I respect my husband very much because he will push us to limits that sometimes we can't, emotions come out, crying comes out, anger comes out, whatever it is, but the respect is there because, sorry, I get emotional sometimes, but he cares so much about us as individuals that he will push you to limits because he has high expectations for you. And I respect that a lot. The other thing is, sorry, regroup. I don't need to. Loyalty to one another, to the system, to our organization. We are that kind of people. We want to try to raise our students and our children to be those, loyal to one another for so many reasons. I mean, we are a Kenpo family. We're huge, and we like to always take that and keep that a personal something that we want to pass on, because sometimes our family bloodlines are not exactly, what they are, but our Kenpo family, oh my goodness, I think Kenpo 5.0 family has been saving grace to so many. And, the other thing is we all support one another on and off the mat. In our small little community of Santa Fe, I know that we try to make that a huge thing for our students to understand that whether or not they have family or not, we're here for one another. So that family line is huge. And the other thing is communication. Communication for one another. I'm learning something from my husband probably every day, not just about Kenpo, but also about his feelings. And also I learn about myself, even just, just talking and doing things like that. So I feel like we have a really good balance. We are the yin and yang. We even have our wedding rings to do that. He has a black onyx on his stone, and mine is a diamond. But that's just kind of who we are. And if you know my husband, Mr. Potter, he's a blonde haired, fair skinned person. So I feel like that's also a different kind of yin and yang, but also our personalities are definitely that. So we have that balance. And I've been very blessed to have found somebody else who actually loves the Kenpo art the way I do. So I think that's, what makes everything work for us. And I also think that we like to keep our learning, always keeping it exciting, and just knowing that there's, somebody else said it on the panel, that there's just always something to learn all the time. Just it's a never ending learning thing, and we love it. So the 3 L's of Kenpo the L's of Kenpo is love, lots to learn, loyalty, and that's my answer.
Erica, thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you.
So I now have the pleasure of introducing this next panelist all the way from England. And I'd like to welcome you to the symposium, Amber Lovelock. Amber was born and raised in Exeter, Devon, England, where she began her Kenpo journey at the age of 5 at the Flaming Fist British Kenpo Karate Academy under head instructor, 7th degree senior professor, Matt Snell. She has been training for 20 years and currently holds the rank of 3rd degree black belt. She tested for her 1st degree black belt in 2012 at the age of 16. And since then, she has taken on a few roles within the club, such as instructing and teaching junior and senior students, doing administration, registering students when they attend class, helping with black belts, and supporting new students with uniforms and membership. Amber also helps run a Facebook group to keep parents, guardians, and students up to date with any news or upcoming events. The Flaming Fist Academy has been open and running since 1986, and she feels the club has played a major role in her life. Throughout her school years, she was bullied, and she found that the club has not only helped her with her confidence, but has also helped her to grow into the person that she is today, especially having the support from those around her. Amber enjoys teaching and helping out as she feels she's able to now give back to the place that helped her. She enjoys working on her techniques and forms, as well as breaking down techniques to understand the concepts and principles to expand her knowledge. In her junior rank days, Amber competed in many interclub competitions and achieved the following in sparring: 2 first-place trophies, 2 second-place medals, and 1 third-place medal. Throughout the years, she has attended multiple Kenpo camps in England and across Europe. She also travels with her instructor to Germany a few times a year to help and support their international students. Amber feels she has gained many long life friends by doing so. Her dream is to one day maybe run the academy she loves, or to even open up her own school. And Amber, welcome, and thank you for being on this panel. So your question is today is, what do you feel is your most difficult belt to work on, was your most difficult belt to work on, and why that is the case?
Thank you very much, Mrs. White. Pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me. I would say my most difficult belt to work on, and I think a lot of people would agree, would be the 1st degree senior black. But I feel that I had a few different factors that played into that than a lot of other people would have when going for that rank. First of all, it had been a lifelong dream of mine. From a very young junior age, I wanted to be a senior black. I wanted to achieve that very high rank. I knew it was going to take a lot of time and a lot of hard work. So when that lifelong dream is in hand's reach, you put a lot of pressure on yourself to achieve it. So that was probably the main factor, one of the main factors. My second factor would be, as you rightly read out, Mrs. White, was I was 16. So here, when I was 16, I was looking to leave school. I was doing my final exams, and I was looking to further my education to go to college, as well as have a part-time job. So with all the life changes, I had to try and adjust and juggle my life changes with my training to make sure I had a healthy life balance, so I didn't burn the candle at both ends, as they say. So that would be the second one. The third one, I would say, is having the pressure of writing a form and doing a thesis. And with that, when you're 16 years old and you're trying to juggle everything, you've got to try and remember that I had very limited knowledge on this. As much as I was training the adult classes and my instructor was doing many seminars for us to take nuggets of information away, I had to try and look at the thesis and turn it into my own. And picking a subject to begin with was quite difficult, but it all came to, thankfully. and doing your own form as well. Throughout the syllabus, as we all know, when you do short form 1, long form 1, there are strict movements you follow. It's already written out. So when someone really gives you the reins and says, make me a form, show me a form, you think, where do you start? How do I start? How do I even begin? A lot of people do base their theses around their form as well, and vice versa. But with the one I had chosen at the time, I couldn't really base my form around my thesis. But there was also the slightly added pressure of Mr. Snell stating that he never wants to see techniques in a form that he already knows, which I completely agree with. How many times have you seen delayed sword? How many times have you seen attacking mace and 5 swords? You need to make your form your own. So trying to put all these elements and factors together at the age of 16 was quite difficult. But I think overall it became less difficult because the number one thing that I think that helped was the support. I always had support. That was support from home, from my family. That was support from my family at the academy. And overall, as much as I had good and bad days, it was always support, motivation, and just answers that I needed when I needed it, and support all the way. And that helped not only with my first degree black, that's helped with my second and the third degree black belts I've gone for. And I believe from that, those past feelings will help with future gradings as well. So that is my answer for that. That was my most difficult belt to go for.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you for sharing your journey and also about the support. That's so important in all of our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I have the pleasure and honor now to introduce this next woman. I met Doreen Dirienzo about 20 years, but I have known about her for many years. She's featured in the original Journey book alongside many well-known and respected martial artists. Doreen has been involved in our charitable event, Royal Family Kids, and has thrown her own tournament in her school and donated the proceeds to royal families, helping many children go to camp. Doreen owns and runs her own school and has a widespread base of students, and it says a lot about her character and the influence that she has in Kenpo. So Doreen began her martial arts journey in the April of 1973, and she attained the rank of first degree black belt in April of 1977. Currently, Doreen holds the rank of 10th degree black belt in Ed Parker's American Kenpo Karate. She is the highest ranked female Ed Parker black belt in the world. Doreen was also a personal student of Senior Master Edmund Parker until he passed away in 1990. Currently, she is a student of Grandmaster Gilbert Velez. She is one of 3 co-founders of Kenpo International, an organization that has schools and members all over the world. Doreen has also taught seminars and workshops throughout Europe, Canada, Mexico, and Chile, and has organized international karate championships in many countries. Doreen was an active tournament fighter for many years. She's one of 8 women selected for the Atlantic World Karate Team, the first professional team which included women. She received her Bachelor's of Science in Physical Education from Northeastern University in June of 1979. Unable to find a teaching job, she opened a small karate studio, Revere Karate Academy, on Squire Road in Revere, Massachusetts, on February 4th, 1980. The karate studio enrollment grew so rapidly that by the end of the first year, Revere Karate Academy had to find a bigger home, and to date, the Academy has taught over 35,000 students. Doreen has also earned a Master's of Education in Physical Education and a Certificate of Advanced Graduate Studies in Educational Leadership. Although Doreen is still actively teaching, her son, Anthony Cagliandro, who is a 6th degree black belt, has now taken over as head instructor of Revere Karate Academy. Since the Revere Karate Academy began servicing Revere and the surrounding communities, she has been dedicated to excellence and commitment, as well as maintaining the highest level of integrity in teaching the American Kenpo curriculum. Now in her 6th decade of teaching, Doreen has continued to maintain the same level of commitment to her students families, and the community. So welcome, Doreen, to your second symposium. So you have such a vast scope of knowledge and experience. So this question is for you. What advice would you give any of the women coming up in the art who want to follow the path that you have followed in order to be a successful school owner, coach, and instructor?
Hi, everybody. First of all, I'm so honored to be here, and I want to thank all of you for such wonderful presentations and such great insight. One of the common threads I heard in everybody was this deep-seated passion for what you do. And I want to say that that's the biggest thing that you want to go with. Do what you love because you love it. You don't have to explain that to anybody. I started karate because I was an athlete in high school and I wanted to stay in shape for the summer. I only planned to be there for 3 months. Well, 48 years later, I'm still here. But something awakened in my soul the very first day. I knew I was where I belonged. It felt right. It felt like home to me. And I always went with that. I listened to a presentation recently given by Rebecca Knight. And one of the things that she said that I thought was really telling was when she first met Sigong Labounty, and he came over to her and said, "Miss Rebecca, you're so sweet." And she said, "Thank you." And then he goes, "I hate sweet." And it reminded me back of the early days when I first started training. There was no sweet. Miss Christine Bannon Rodriguez will probably agree that we were not brought up with sweet as part of our training. And that brings me to my first point, which is I always walked on the mat as a student, not a female student, a student, as I did later on as an instructor, leader, mentor, coach, whatever role that I was in. Because if you look in the dictionary, there's no definition that says a gender. And by the way, brilliance, intelligence, talent, competence, honor, dignity are not defined by gender. And so when you walk on the floor, there are always going to be those that will, kind of look at you and see, of course, they can't help but notice that you're female. And how you handle that makes all the difference of how you'll be respected or how you be received. I always use what I call a backdoor approach. I never once pushed my way into any venue. I never insisted on being treated a certain way. I always walked on there, willing to learn, willing to, stand in line. In fact, my dearest friend, Diane Tanaka, when we first met, she said, "Wouldn't you want to be like the 99th best person on the floor instead of the best woman?" I always hated when someone said that, oh, it's so wonderful for people to see such a strong female martial artist. And I actually one time looked at a man and I said, "Drop the female, because I've earned it." And he said, "Are you trying to tell me that I don't respect women?" I said, "By that comment, you absolutely don't." And, anyway, so getting back to what I was saying, this backdoor approach, and I'm going to explain with a little story. In 1993, I was invited to go to Madrid as an instructor. So I got there a day early and I decided to go over to the studio. I walked on the floor. I was all dressed in my uniform. At the time, I was a 6th-degree black belt, but I outranked everybody on the floor. They didn't introduce me. They didn't acknowledge me. And I knew that going in there because of the type of, culture that they had in that country, that, women were sort of like over there and the men were in line and ready to work. And anyway, so I got in line and it was my turn to do some training. The guy that I was working with, he looked at me and he did the technique as if I were a porcelain doll. And then when it was my turn to, execute, I just let him have it. And he looked at me like, went, "You and me go like this back and forth." And I, like he didn't say it because he was Spanish. He just kind of pointed. And I looked at him and I went, And we went back and forth. By the end of that weekend, I had made a new friend. I had earned their respect. And the best part was they invited me back by myself another time to teach them how to fight. So in a way, I thought not only did I break a language barrier, I broke a gender barrier as well. And that's the way I've always handled it. I've walked over to people, at a seminar, and may I help you with that? They'll look at me and go, no. And I move along. Oh, Mrs. C, can you help me over here? Can you move to the next person? If somebody has a challenge with the fact that you're female, that's their challenge. It's not yours. You know what you know. That's always been my belief. I don't try to push myself onto anybody. And now I'm at the helm of an international organization that are mostly male members. And I get those phone calls. Can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? And they're not looking at me as like, oh, we can't ask her because she's a woman, or we can't, we got to ask the guy. It doesn't happen that way. There's been funny little story. A guy walked up to me one time at a seminar and he goes, how do you teach men? And I said, well, I try to have patience. Sometimes they don't learn as quickly as the female students. I said, but if I stick with them, they actually do get it eventually. And he looked at me very perplexed. And I said, well, my answer was just as condescending as your question. And I said, this is, you got to look back now. I've been doing this for 48 years of my life. So these things happened years ago. But the best advice I can say is be yourself, walk on the, floor with the mindset of you're the teacher. And that's it. And you don't have to explain about being female. I'm a leader in my community. I've done a lot of things, all over the world. But honestly, the best thing I can say is just be yourself, and you don't have to apologize for being female, and you don't have to try to be one of the guys. Just be yourself. Do your best. Just one little quick story. I was a high school teacher, and these two girls wanted to join the football team. And so the coach sent them to me. And they were like about 5 feet tall and 100 pounds apiece. And I said to them, are you willing to put on 35 pounds of football equipment and get, tackle? And this boy, he weighed about 200 pounds. You have to tackle this 200-pound guy. Are you willing to do that? And if you can't answer yes to that, then you shouldn't go out for the team, because you have to walk on the field as a football player, not as a female football player. And that's what I said to them. You walk on as a black belt, as a karate student, as a teacher, mentor, leader. And that's the best piece of advice I can give. Honestly, that's what worked for me. Don't try to push your way in. Don't walk on a floor and, act as though, oh, I'm the senior person here, or I'm the highest rank, because that will turn not just men off, that turns off anybody. And honestly, that is it. Just be yourself, be present, be mindful that you're in charge, you're the teacher, you're the coach, and it will work. It will work that way. Anyway, that's pretty much it. 48 years worth of it.
All right. Thank you very much, Doreen. And so we're done with our prepared answers to questions at this time. And now we're going to go ahead and go into our question and answer time. And we've already had a couple of questions submitted to the chat. And so I'm going to go ahead and start with the ones that are directed at specific panelists. So our first one is for Catherine Franca. And the question was, if you're currently enduring a minor foot injury and you're still able to continue your karate training, how do you effectively tell your instructor and make sure you are training in a way that is not harming your injury? And if your instructor is aware of your injury but not completely accommodating it, how do you go about your training?
Okay, I have a personal responsibility for myself and have to deal with it openly. Every trainer has to respect when an injury means that not all techniques and loads can be trained. The trainer should provide options and point out other ways in which you can train. For example, you can also train in other positions, sitting down without strain. So I trained in the last year. I'm sitting and I give my training, and it's not so difficult. It is another way to give an option to train karate. Also, when you sit in a chair, when you can't move. And also in the last 20 years, I have in surgery, and I must go with my sticks, and I trained with the sticks. It's also an opinion. It is okay for you?
Great, thank you so much. I think that answered the question. Our next question is going to be for Ms. Erica Potter. And the question is, part of our learning is done through teaching, and that's something that can be enjoyed and done even if a person is only a purple belt. So do you have any advice on teaching?
Yes, absolutely. So even though you are just a purple belt, so in the beginning, when I first started to help with teaching, and I was asked to do that, I was pretty young. I think I was definitely an underbelt, but I was asked to teach at a school it was the after school program for Native Americans, which was really awesome. And it was, I was a little bit unsure at the time, but then I thought, well, you know what, it's okay, because you got to find something that you really love within your art, or whatever it is in that level of whatever belt level you're teaching. It doesn't even have to be pertaining to that level, but maybe there's something that you like so much within your training that you would like to pass on. So, whatever it is that you are wanting to relay to your students, make sure that you're confident in what you're wanting to teach, but then have a great time with it. Don't worry so much about the rank, but teach something that you're passionate about within your system, or whatever it is that they're asking you to teach, but do it that with confidence and have some fun with it. But don't be afraid to do that. Just step out there and do what you love to do, and pass on, one of the greatest moves. I think there was a time also when I was learning in the Kenpo system, and somewhat the term, the money shot, we all participate in seminars, and when you have to pay for a seminar. So if there's just one little thing that you learn from it, then you got the value out of that seminar. So think of it that way, that money shot that paid for the tournament, or I mean, not tournament, I'm sorry, the seminar that you just entered, and you want to pass that on somebody else. It may save a life one day, you just never know.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Potter. The next question we have is for Jackie Mcvicker. And the question was, as a smaller person, how do you demonstrate the power of your Kenpo within seminars to the class?
I know exactly who's asked this question, and I know the reason why, because he's the one I usually did it on. As I say, I'm a 5'4". I'm about 10 stone 10, and when I turn up, people think, it's rather like the questions Doreen said, very much on that thing. This is a question from Matt Snell. What I invariably have to do, unfortunately, is in order to show the power, and like I already discussed, I work the power principles, I work the stances, I work the basics. I tend to pull out the biggest man I can find, and basically go through him. And Matt Snell, our 7th degree in Exeter, and contested that, I'm sure. So that's the then they can see that, because I used to get asked after they saw me move, it was like, how do you get that power as a smaller person? And so then I just do it, and then they kind of come on board. I hope that answers your question. Matt's no.
All right, so we now have one more question that was asked, and this was for Christine Bannon Rodriguez. And the question is, what is your favorite memory from working in movies and television?
Oh, that's a tough one. I have some great memories. It was all, you know, like I said before, like being a white belt and starting over and learning the process, totally different than how we do our martial arts. But probably one of my favorite moments was when I did Batman and Robin. It was, I was doubling for Alicia Silverstone, and Cheryl Wheeler was doubling for Uma Thurman. And Uma is a very tall woman. She's over 6 foot. So I had to wear like 4-inch stiletto boots to be able to be close to her height. And there was a move where she plays Poison Ivy, and she has the knife in her hand, and she's checking herself out, her reflection in the knife. So it was a very close-up picture of her. So we couldn't use the stunt double for that move. So the director said, you know, can you kick that knife out of her hand without hurting her? And I'm like, piece of cake, you know, and they just like, no, seriously, please do not. And I'm like, I will not hurt her. I mean, you know, so I had to kick the knife out of Uma's hand rather than the stunt person. So that was like a cool moment.
All right, thank you very much. We have 2 more questions that have been submitted, and no names for these people, for these questions. So I'm going to go ahead and roll the die and see who we get. All right, first one, number 9. Number 9 looks like Doreen. All right, so Doreen, this question is for you. One of the audience members said, I find it hard to perform complex moves or forms because my mind and body struggle to keep up with each other. I never let my disability define me or overcome me, but I would appreciate knowing what advice you would give a student who has ADHD or who has a learning disability.
Am I there?
You are, you're good.
Okay, so I've worked with lots of children through the years with different challenges and just different disabilities, and students as well, adult students. My best advice would be to break the technique anytime you're learning it. If you have a hard time with the sequencing, break it down into very small pieces. Start with trying to master 2 or 3 moves. When you can do that, then you can add on. So that way your mind and body have a chance to keep up with one another. You know, when I demonstrate, I may show the student the entire technique so they can see what it's going to look like. But I would always recommend breaking it into small pieces. It really works. And this approach to teaching is called task teaching, that you let a student master a very small portion of something, and then you add on. And you keep adding to the task till eventually they can do the entire sequence. As far as if there's a limitation, a physical limitation, one of the beautiful things that I love about Kenpo is that you can tailor any technique or any move or any sequence so that it suits you and you can build it around you. Whether you're a smaller person in stature, whether you're slower, you're older like me, you know, I've had hip replacement, I've had to adapt a lot of movement. You can tailor any move to suit the needs of the individual. I remember Mr. Parker teaching us that concept that the art should fit us, not us fit the art.
All right, thank you, Ms. Dirienzo. And we have another question. And let's see who's going to answer this one. Number 4 is Kat. All right, so Kat, any advice on sparring? The audience member who submitted the question said she feels like she's not good at it and she gets nervous.
I used to love sparring. I mean, I still love sparring. Let me clarify that. But it was my favorite thing in high school. I absolutely got really into sparring. And the only way I got good at it, though, was just trying and trying again and seeing what worked, seeing what didn't work. So yeah, it's scary at first, especially if you're not used to getting hit. That is extremely intimidating the first time you get socked in the stomach or something, knocks the wind out of you. But you just have to do repetition. One of the best advice I ever got for sparring was to practice a handful of techniques and get really, really good at them. Don't try to be a jack of all trades. Right? A jack of all trades is a master of none. You want to be really good at, say, I don't know, 5 or 6 techniques in the sparring ring and expert at those. And that should be where you go to for your bread and butter. Because if you try to just master all these different techniques, then all of them are just going to be so-so. Like, so if you're excellent at throwing a side kick, then you're going to learn how to open somebody up for a side kick, right? Or if you're excellent doing that back fist to an undercut, like that's your thing, right? But don't try to just learn 50 different techniques, right? Really focus, specialize, but then above all, practice, and definitely practice with the people that scare you. I know that's a opposite to logical thinking there, but that's the only way you're going to overcome that. Enter as many tournaments, go to as many, other schools nearby that'll let you spar with them, and just really get used to different body types, because you don't want to know what to expect. You need to be used to the unexpected. So that's kind of my advice.
All right, thank you, Kat. And we had another question. This was directed to Amber Lovelock. So Amber, what was your thesis about?
My thesis originally was about what is Kenpo. So it brought in how Master Parker done his journey and how it became Kenpo, and then sort of how the system developed. So belt ranks into the crest, into universal pattern. And that was really it. It was what is Kenpo, and a bit of brief history on Master Parker.
All right, thank you very much, Amber. All right, so I don't see any more questions in the chat, so I think that is all we have right now. And I'm going to go ahead and bring Mrs. White back on the screen, and she's going to give some closing remarks.
Thank you, Heather. First of all, I just want to express how much I really enjoyed this time. It went by real quickly. I really enjoyed hearing from each and every panelist, and you shared your experiences. You did share your strengths and your hopes with all of us. It's just such an empowering time that we had here, that I had here, and I thank you. Thank you for the panelists. It took so much time out of your days to prepare for this. I know we practiced 2 weeks ago, and you came prepared, and what you've done, the service you've given to all of us and out there watching as well, so appreciated. Thank you so much. And to you who are out there in the panel or off the panel, out the airwaves watching this symposium, thank you so much. You've supported this. I think is this the greatest thing ever, and we really hope to have more, and your support is really important. So, we welcome any comments that you have, any questions for future panels, any suggestions, and you'll be able to see our emails at the end of this symposium. Heather will post them. So we welcome all types of questions and suggestions, and I hope that you do that. Take us up and contact us, and look out for future symposiums that we'll be having down the road, which we will. And just reflect today on all of the insight that these wonderful women, these leaders gave to us. Is really it's an awesome experience. So for now, we're going to unfortunately end this seminar, and but until next time, thank you. We all wish you a wonderful rest of your weekend.